our stream. I will announce it that we have started.
Oh yeah, I can see it now.
OBS. Let me see if everything is working correctly on my end, and then we can actually start. Okay. Okay. Let's sit into my original position here, as I'm always saying. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us know if there is no lag on my end on the stream, because my internet was messy today, so please let me know. Hölgyek, urak, hogyha bármi van, akkor szóljatok. Ha bármilag, akkor tudassátok velem, és ha nincs, akkor kezdhetünk. Let us know. And as I'm always saying, ladies and gentlemen, you will be able to ask questions at the end of the interview, so feel free to do that. Ooh, it's hot here. It's boiling hot. Okay. Okay. Let us know. Did I announce it on my Discord? Oh, I did not press enter. Okay. Szia, Mosi! Mosi, minden jó? DDR, sziasztok! Üdvözletem mindenkinek, hölgyek, urak, kérlek szépen tudassátok velem, hogy tényleg jó-e a minőség. Let me know if the quality is good on my end and there is no lag. Since, like I said, my internet was messing up this morning. Minden pacek? Kezdhetünk? Can we start? Nice, okay. Jó minden? Super. Okay. Hang is jó minden? The voice is good as well. You can hear me well, right?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect. Okay, nice. Let me know if we can start then. Let me know.
Yeah, whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Welcome everyone at my very newest episode of my Dev Live show. I'm today joined with the creator of the game called Cryptmaster, and I'm very thankful and very honored as well that you have accepted this request for this show of mine. Like I'm always saying, let's start with a little bit of introduction. So please introduce yourself for us.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Lee Williams. I'm one half of the team who made Cryptmaster. I'm the lesser half, I think, to be honest, because Paul, the other developer, did all the coding and the art. But I did the writing and a lot of the design, the sort of puzzle design, and the voice of the Cryptmaster. And I've been sort of knocking around in the games industry for quite a few years now, on and off. Cryptmaster is the first really big personal project. I guess I've done writing for a lot of different games, most recently probably Valheim, Fall Guys, a few others, but this was the first really big personal project for me, so it was a big deal, and it's been lovely to see that it's been successful so far.
Nice. Okay, thank you for that. So my very first question after this is like, I'm always interested in people's origin story when it comes to games and the first contact with video games. So what was your very first memory and very first contact with video games? As a player, of course.
As a player, yeah. Well, that's a really good question. Well, I mean, I'm old enough. I'm pushing towards 50 now, and I'm old enough that my first kind of experiences with video games were the very early, now I'm not sure what it was it an Atari, one of the very early Pong type machines where you had just the knobs and you've got just the two bats. I remember that with my dad bringing that home one day very distinctly. And then, I mean, when I was growing up, we had I had a ZX Spectrum. That was probably that was where I really fell in love with video games. I used to play a lot of games on the Spectrum. I remember playing Elite, the original Elite, with the wireframe 3D graphics, and it blew my mind at the time, even though you had to wait for ages I had it on like a copied cassette that somebody had sent me, and you had to wait for ages for it to load on the cassette. But that was I fell in love with video games, I guess, at that moment. So those are some of my earliest memories.
I see.
I could talk for a lot longer about early
No, it's
video
okay. It's
game
okay.
memories, but I won't.
I'm down to hear you talking about it. I love it when people talk a lot. Yeah. Okay. So when was the time when you switched from not just loving and playing video games, but you realized that you have a mind for creating games? Was that always like
Um,
a dream of yours that you wanted to make games as a kid as well?
yeah, I think it was a dream that I shelved for a couple of decades, probably in my case. I think probably my story of getting into like making video games is quite unusual because it was a dream of mine. I guess when I was a kid, I always thought about wouldn't it be great to make video games? I think all people playing video games will think that at some
True,
point.
true, true, true.
And I love the idea of that. For me, along with video games, books were my big thing as well. So the idea of writing stories when I first came into working in video games, it was as a writer. But then I didn't really pursue that, to be honest. I left school. I didn't go to university. I was a linesman for the electricity board. I was a security guard. I did all sorts of things. I lived in China for 5 years. I had all kinds of careers. Then I came back. I qualified as a teacher. I finally went to university, qualified as a teacher. I had a whole career in special education. Um, so, a good couple of decades until probably when I was in my mid 30s, I guess. I moved back from China with my wife to live back here in the UK, and I started writing for things, and I had some success with short stories and that sort of thing. And I'd always wanted to write for video games, so I posted on some forums, on the TIG forums, the TIG forums, which were like very active at the time. They probably I think they still are, but I don't. I used to use visit them a lot at that time. And some of the first people that I got in touch with were people that I still work with. So Richard Svensson, who made Valheim, Alan Trevette, and Paul, who is the co-developer of Cryptmaster. And I really just went on the forums and said, look, I'm a writer. I've had a few things published. I'm really interested in writing for video games. Does anybody want anything? And this was in, I think, it was a big moment for indie games, kind of, at that time. And they just took me up on it, and I did a bit of writing for a few things for Fistful of Gun, which was a game that Paul made at the time. And it just grew. It just sort of grew from there. I think really that was my first entry into actually working in video games,
I see.
and it was more of a sideline for quite a few years. It was just something I did on the side alongside my main career, which was, as I say, SEN. But then I kept getting offers. Like it grew to the point where I was getting offers of doing things a bit more permanent in video games, in writing. And then just before the pandemic, before the first lockdown, I decided to sort of take the plunge and go full time in writing, which I did. That was about 5 years ago now, and I haven't looked back. And I really, I love what I'm doing now. I did before. I've enjoyed all the careers I've had, to be honest. But it's nice now. I've got kids, and so I can work from home, and it just it suits me really well.
Do you think that you found yourself by making it full-time, as a full-time job?
A bit, I think, yeah. As I said, I enjoyed the teaching as well. I'd had a sort of promotion in teaching, which was like a backhanded promotion, because basically it meant that I wasn't getting to spend time with the kids anymore. It was more meetings and organisational, that role, which is not my strong point. So I wasn't. That was when I decided, well, let's try something. Let's try something full-time in video games. And I do, yeah. I think, as I say, for a long time, I was very creative as a kid, and then I didn't have an outlet for that particularly for quite a long time in my life.
What
And
could be
then
the case behind that you did not went into making video games or writing for video games for such long period of your life?
Yes, sorry, what was the question? Was it?
So what could be the case behind that you did not went
Um,
into making video games or writing video game stories for such long period of your life?
I don't know really. Laziness would be one, and just kind of other. When I was younger, as I say, and I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't really know what I wanted when I was younger, and I left. I didn't go into university and things. And where I come from, the opportunities for jobs are are not great. I come from a small island off the south of England, and there isn't much that's very sort of aspirational for
I see.
kids growing up here. So as I say, I was a labourer for the electricity board for a long time, and I did similar jobs to that on and off. Um, I did lots of things. It never really occurred to me that even though I'd have loved to have done it, it never really occurred to me, I guess, that video games was something I could do. Was that didn't seem like a realistic career
Have you been doing
route.
writing, by the way, around that time when you were not working in
Yeah,
video games or for video games?
yeah, I always used to write, but just for myself, really, just for pleasure. I would never ever have
I
described
I
myself
could
as a
resonate, or I
writer.
can resonate with that because I did that for a lot of years, and I still
Right?
do, by
Yeah.
the way, because I haven't released my books that I made or wrote. So yeah,
Right. Well, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to do, even if you don't. I just did it
true,
more or less for myself. I just
true,
needed
true,
that
true,
outlet, I
true,
think.
true, true.
Um, and but it didn't really occur to me that that was something that I could turn into a
I
career. That
see,
was more
I see,
something
I
I
see, I
just did
see.
for myself. Until later, as I said, and then when I moved back here with my wife, um, and I had more time on my hands, suddenly we were teaching. We used to teach. I used to teach language classes in local schools,
I see.
and in between, and I started sending away some stories for publication, that sort of thing, and I had some success with those. That, as I said earlier, that's what sort of built up then into my career in video games. But it's only within the last year or so since I went to GDC, since Cryptmaster has launched, that I've begun to say that I'm a writer or that I'm anything. I'd never really said that to anybody before, so it's been an odd feeling suddenly, yeah.
And
That
also
it's yeah,
probably a nice feeling too, right?
a
So
lovely fit, but a lovely feeling, yeah. Because as I say, it's kind of I think it is what I've always wanted to do in many ways. But I just yeah, when I was younger, I didn't have the ambition to pursue it, I guess,
I see,
and I didn't consider it would be a realistic ambition for me. So it's only recently that I've sort of found my way here, I think.
I see, I see. Do you think, by the way, that the change in your life that was made, that you started being a writer for video games, was because like you had a more supportive family when you started writing for games? Like your wife became
Yes,
like your most supportive person in your life?
yes, I think so. Yeah, I think that is fair to say. I mean, I think my parents were very, very supportive of me and everything I wanted to do when I was younger.
I see, I
But
see.
I guess you're not always so inclined to listen to your parents, especially when you're young. When I was that age,
True, true,
and I
true.
had my own things that I wanted to do. Um, but yeah, but then when I said yeah, as I said, once we moved, I was in China for about 5 years, and then once we moved back here, my wife and I. Yeah, I think it was just this. It just felt like the right time in my life to sort of settle down and you sort of reevaluate and think, well, what is it? Because before then I'd been drifting in different jobs and different things, and I'd like traveling and then you just think, well, what is it I really want from life? I guess, and then it took me another decade or two to find that out.
But at least
But
you found out, right? So
but finally I did. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
hopefully you
yeah.
feel
I
that
kind
you
of
are at the right place now and the right time. Yeah.
I do, I do. That you'll always have some regrets, and you'll always, I think to yourself, "Oh, why didn't I get this sorted out when I was younger? Why couldn't I could have done so much more by now if I'd have figured it out when I was young." But then, having said that, I don't think I would be doing the same things. I don't think I was ready for it when I was younger. I think the experiences that I've had in life kind of inform a lot of what I do now anyway. So
I see.
it just works the way it works. I think.
I see. Okay. Do you think that, or do you feel that it was very scary or very hard to take the first step into like be a writer or start being a writer for video games?
Um, it wasn't really. I don't think in my case.
Okay.
Um, I think again because it came by increments, by very small steps. So
I see.
I'd begun by having some short stories published, that sort of thing. So I
I
got
see.
used to, and I used to visit a lot of writing websites where you would get feedback on your writing. And some of them were quite brutal. Some of them were real, were really sort of quite wild. So and you would get a lot of there would be a lot of feedback, a lot of arguments between writers, loads of egos clashing. They were quite interesting sites back in the sort of like the early 2000s, I guess. And so that was quite fun. And then you get used to it, and you develop a thick skin there. I remember, because you're sharing your writing with lots of other people. You get lots of feedback on it. That was really useful. And then, yeah, by little steps, I felt I got better as a writer. And at this point, it was still just a hobby. It was still a sideline, and I would submit to. I mean, there's no money in short story writing, to be honest, not except for a very few people. So mostly, but I was quite successful. I would get them picked up by magazines and things now and then. I won a couple of competitions, so I was very happy doing that. And the success came just in very small steps. So there didn't seem to be. I don't remember any point at which I felt like I was taking a plunge. If you see what I mean, I was walking very gradually into like a slope down a sloping beach rather than jumping in. Yeah, and then, as I say, and then when I first reached out to games developers, it was for indie games that I did the first bits of writing, and then later on, through people that I'd met and I'd done bits of writing for their games, and then they might have gone on to be successful somewhere and they would remember me. I then got other pieces of writing for bigger studios and things. I remember one very early job I did was writing for Trackmania for Ubisoft. So that was really cool. All of a sudden, I felt, oh, this is actually quite, I felt like a fake. I remember they got me to go out to Paris and go and see the team and play the game and sign the NDA and play the game before it arrived. And there was, lots of people there waiting for me to do some amazing writing for the game, and I felt like a fraud because that's the first time I'd really done anything like that. But I'm quite proud of the work I did on that game, and other things built up from then on. You just sort of, I think you make contacts, and if you're producing good work, you're producing work to the best of your ability, then you'll find your way.
I see. Okay. So I believe that creators, especially writers, by the way, who are writing stories for video games, are always down to put their inner self and heart and love and all the memories that they share or they experience throughout life. Is that true for yourself as well? That you had some sad or happy moments that you were using, even if it's not or wasn't intentional to use, but you use them as examples or messages, hidden messages in your stories?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's unavoidable for the most part. That you automatically
True.
channel your own experiences.
It's like a therapy session, right?
Into what you're doing. It can be sometimes. I mean, a lot of what I write for games, at least, it wasn't maybe with the stories always, but a lot of what I write for games is I tend to write more comedy, I think, for games.
I see.
But having said that, you can't, even when you're writing comedy, of course, you still draw on your life experiences.
Sure.
I try to avoid having a message. That's just my artistic preference, I guess.
But why?
Because I always feel it's like you're being a little bit. It's not dishonest exactly, but for me, art is something that is designed to you're influencing the emotions of your audience, and I kind of feel always that if you have a message, how to put this? I don't even know if I believe it, actually. Now I'm halfway through saying it. I'm going to finish it anyway.
My show is a therapy session, not just for me, but for my guests as well.
This is actually, this is completely different to any interview I've given so far about Critmaster, but in the nicest way. I'm enjoying this. What was that say? Yeah, because, no, I always feel like having a message. If you're sort of preaching at somebody or you're trying to deliver a message through art, it always feels a little bit slightly dishonest because you're pulling on their heartstrings a bit. I almost feel that if that should be done objectively,
like an emotional pull, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't
like playing with puppets.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I think I don't want to use art to kind of put forward my own views. You see what I mean? Having said that, I think the function of a lot of art should be to encourage people to feel things and think about things. So for me personally, I would like what I try to do. You can never avoid. I don't think you can ever avoid putting any of your opinions
True. And
into
also you
work.
were teaching kids, so it
Um,
was like an intentional thing to do, right?
yeah, I guess that probably, you're quite right. I think that probably a lot of that does come from my background as a teacher, that I would consider it immoral as a teacher for me to try and push my opinions onto students. I should be objective. Um, and I think, yeah, that's very insightful. I think probably that I've never considered that, but I think that is probably something that has fed through into what I do as a writer as well. That I don't, I like to introduce, hopefully, um, you would like to think that what you do is thought provoking, that an audience will experience it and they will think about things maybe that they haven't thought before. But I think I prefer to put forward issues without necessarily stating what my
I
opinion would
see.
be or what
More
my
like
proposed
questions
solution
that they can
would
question,
be.
like players can question something. I see.
Yes, I think so personally, and I think that's the kind of art that I appreciate as well. I never like the feeling of being preached to
I see.
from a piece of art, whether or not I agree with the message
I see.
that's
I see.
being
I
sent.
see.
I much prefer something that attempts to show something and to present something that you then have to make your own, decide on your own reactions to it and figure your own way through it.
I see. Okay. Have you ever thought, by the way, of that teaching kids could be used for, like, or video games could be used for teaching kids?
Oh, definitely. I used
Okay.
to when I taught, I did an awful lot of that. We
Oh,
used to
nice. Okay.
I used to use Construct 3, which I used at the time to make my own little games for game
Oh,
jams,
nice, 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 nice.
Ludum Dare and things. And I used to use that a lot in class, and we used to make. Um, I can link you to some later. We've made some great little games, but like collaboratively. I used to specialize. I was, as I say, was special education, so kids with a whole range of issues that might have impacted on that. They couldn't be in mainstream education for one reason
I see.
or another. But we used to. So I had a lot of fun. We made lots of games together, and I used to use things like I used to use Minecraft in a class as well. I had a little unit for children with quite extreme behavioural difficulties, so they couldn't be educated in a mainstream classroom. And we just had a small group there. They were lovely. They were such a lovely bunch. They found it very, very difficult to communicate with each other without hitting each other, essentially. So to teach them some social skills, we used to use Minecraft really effectively, and it was Minecraft education I used with them, and they would use laptops, and I set up a whole thing where there was like a desert island that they got shipwrecked on, and each day they would have new tasks. You've got to build a shelter today. There's a storm coming. This and that. But I would give some of them certain tools, and others of them other tools. I've not looked at Minecraft education for ages since it changed, didn't it? Changed to Microsoft. But anyway, at the time you could set it. You could set it so that people couldn't give different tools and things. So essentially you make them work together, and it was great. They could communicate and cooperate with each other in a way through Minecraft, with that little bit of distance between them that they could never have done to begin with in person. When we were sat around in a circle, they struggled desperately with that, but they could learn some of those skills through the Minecraft sessions that we did, and then gradually they could apply them, because after the sessions we would then, if we'd done something in Minecraft, we would write it up. We kept like castaway diaries, so we would write it up afterwards, and we would plan what we were going to do in the next one. So we would do a lot of things away from the screens as well, and some of those social skills you could carry from what they were doing in the game into what they were doing physically in the classroom. So I'm a huge advocate for games in education, to be honest. Not if they're just that. There are some educational game sites where you just, and the lazy ones. So a teacher will just, you'll have like a maths site, and there's loads of games, and what they are is they play like 30 seconds of Flappy Bird and then answer a sum, and then
Yeah.
that sort of thing, and that's a bit point. All you're doing there, that just kind of, you get a
It's
little
not a real
reward of the
skill,
game.
or at least a very, small segment of a skill level. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just being used like as a little reward
Yeah.
then, and I don't think that's very effective. But I think there are lots of opportunities in games
True.
to integrate it with the mechanics of the game. You teach something through what they're doing. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of
A
that.
lot of people are not realizing the power of video games for schools, like you were talking about Minecraft and the power of cooperation between human beings or kids, especially who are
Yeah,
could beat up
absolutely. Yeah,
themselves in real life, but they are developing their skills not to do that in real life since they played Minecraft together and became friends. That's a
yeah,
very nice
they're a
thing
huge
to
application.
hear about. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
great, and just past the sort of social skills as well,
yeah.
just things like maths. I would say to them, that the next day's challenge will be you're going to have to build a fort. Let's plan it, and then you're going to have to work out how many blocks you need to
Yeah,
build it. So they've
exactly.
got to start doing, spatial measurements and things, and they won't even realise they're
True,
doing
true,
it.
true, true.
They
They
want to
don't
build
have
the
to
fort.
figure out it out with the boring side of math, but they are playing it in a creative way that they do not even
That's it,
realize that they are doing it. Yeah,
and they're seeing that there's a value to it as well, because if they manage to figure that out using their applied mass knowledge, then they'll know how many bits of wood they need, and they can buy wood from me and so on. So they're just motivated, and they get the sense of, oh, maths actually isn't, it's not something abstract, or English or whatever it was we were learning, that it's not something that's just unrelated to my life. This is something that I can use in something that I enjoy, so to speak. So
true.
it can be quite powerful, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you, and I think that video games should be everywhere in schools. In fact, I always say this, so it's a good thing to have them. Yeah. Okay. So you were talking about how kids changed by playing games, but what is true for you? How you changed in your other territories of real life from being a game developer and a writer? And what
Oh,
skills have you picked up like during your other territories of life, as from being a game developer yourself and as a
from bit.
writer?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I do. I guess now that I do, you know, particularly now I'm a developer full time. I think I do tend to look at things with an eye to if they will make an interesting game mechanic or not. In general,
I see.
Um, I think that comes with a lot of careers. I guess when I was a teacher, you would often look at things then with an eye to if it's is that something you could use in the classroom, a teaching opportunity. And I think I do as a developer now. Um, I do tend to think of that sort of thing. The other day I was talking to somebody about metal detecting, and all of my thoughts, I was just thinking, how could you do that in a game? Could you make that really fun? It's obviously a fun activity. How would you make that fun in a game? And I had it during the conversation. I hope my eyes didn't glaze over during the conversation, because while I was talking to him, all the time, by the end of it, I had like a metal detecting game planned in my head. So I think, yeah, there probably
There's
is a
the
lot of
story
that.
writer in you, right?
Yeah, and I think as a writer, I think I tend to do that anyway. That's something that you can't help almost. It's too much of a temptation when you're
True,
talking to
true, true,
people, not
true.
just talking to people, but you're always thinking, yeah, could this
It's
make
the
a
passion. It's the passion of being a writer.
yeah, that's it. And I think you need to have that, to be honest.
Exactly, exactly.
I think if you don't have that, then yeah, you're just you're
It would be just a hobby if
yourself.
there
Yeah,
wasn't a
yeah.
passion in you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Any other skills that you have picked up, or any other
From
things?
developing, I don't know really. I'm also, I guess I'm very lucky. When we were talking earlier about you mentioned, but it was something that I'd wanted to do when I was a kid, and I'm very fortunate. I'm very aware that my role as a developer now is kind of what you imagine making video games will be like when you're a kid, because I get to do the as I say, Paul is phenomenal. Paul does the coding and the art, and we collaborate on the design. So what I get to do is more or less, yeah, what a kid would imagine being a game developer is. I get to sit here and just sort of think, oh, I wonder if this would be fun. I wonder if this would be interesting. And I just get to, and then I say, I get onto Paul and say, oh, listen, I've got all these ideas. Can we do something with these? So that's really lucky. I don't think many people get to do that, so I'm very fortunate there. Paul will come back to me, mind you, and say, no, we can't do that. half of the time I'll send him a load of ideas and he'll say, well, no, because this is not going to work. But yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is I haven't learned many applicable skills as a game developer, because I don't. I dabble in code. I mean, that's probably, I'm being generous to myself to say I dabble. Paul lets me into the build sometimes to do very specific things under strict instructions not to mess anything up. But that's about it.
I see. I see. Okay. Are you also like love to reading books or just to write, stories, and
Oh,
or
reading
you
certainly,
still
yeah.
love writing? Because I know that some writers are not into books anymore. They just only write, not to get too much influence from other books, but
Yeah, I think sometimes there comes a point if I'm writing something, it will usually be influenced by lots of other writers. I read a lot of books,
I see.
but there usually will come a point when you do think, right, I have to not read anything. For me, anyway, for the way I work, I'll read a lot about something, and then there comes a point where I'm like, no, I don't. Otherwise, it's going to influence what I do. It's going to, so I need to stop that now. I'll stop the research, so to speak, unless it's non-fiction research, and then just concentrate on on telling it in your way. I do find that's very useful. I couldn't be writing something at the same time as I'm, some of the things, some of the fantasy writers that were an influence on Cryptmaster, I couldn't be reading them at the same time as I was writing for the game. I don't think that wouldn't have worked. But I read a lot in the run up to making it.
I see. I see. And so, which one of your stories that you have written, either if it's video game stories or before that you started uh, working as a game developer, which stories have been your favorite ones that you have wrote?
Well, that's a good question. I wrote a lot of. I used to write very very short, irreal, sort of slightly surreal stories. Mostly when I wrote short stories. Some of those I'm still very very proud of. Since I started writing for game, I wrote a story. The longest piece of writing I've done, probably because it's more than novel length all told, because it's interactive fiction. I did a sort of interactive novel for Choice of Games, who've published. I don't know if you know Choice of Games. They did
I
Choice
think I
of
heard
Robot.
of that game. Yeah.
Lots and lots of it's pure text. It's interactive
Yeah.
fiction, but it's very involved interactive fiction. You can do a lot with it. You have a lot of stats in the background and so on under the hood. And I wrote a piece for them called Ironheart, which is a sort of interactive novel. It's based on the idea. It sounds so goofy every time I try and put it in a sentence or two. It's based on the idea that there are giant medieval mechs in the Crusades, in the First Crusade. So there's a little bit of time travel in there, and there's big like stompy knights and things, and I was very pleased with that one though. Even though it sounds a bit ridiculous, the concept. I did a lot of research of the period for that, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
Um, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the world and the characters in that one
Do you
particularly, I
believe in
think.
time travel, by the way?
Oh well, what a question. No, probably not. I don't know enough. I don't know enough really. I don't think. I mean, I don't. I think it. No, I'm going to back away from that question. Otherwise, what I'll try and do is I'll give you some like half-formed theories based on things I've heard, and it won't. No. So I don't know.
Okay. But would you go back in time if you could to be influenced by those, your own experiences from historical times?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to travel back to some times in history. I'm a great lover of history. I read a lot of what I read nowadays actually are history books. So there are some times I'd love to go back to, and be a fly on the wall, so to speak.
I see. Okay. Okay. And which book was your favorite one, or which books were your favorite ones, if you could name
My
some
favorite books. So,
that influenced your life as a developer, and your other territories of your life that
I
had an
think
impact to you as well.
books that have had the biggest impact on me, I guess, probably Tristram Shandy, which is it's a very old comic novel from the 1700s by Lawrence Stern. It's very sort of experimental, and it's beautiful. When I read that, it felt like somebody was speaking to me directly to me, in a way that I hadn't really known before from a book. That was a huge influence on me when I first read that. But I mean, there's so many writers I love. I don't know where to start really with that one. Like for Cryptmaster, I was influenced a lot by. I love Fritz Lieber, fantasy author. Um, Borges. If I start, I won't stop. But I mean, there's been so many. Yeah, I do read a lot, and I think that's probably my biggest passion. Actually, I love video games as well, obviously, and to me, the fusion of the two don't. There's no mismatch between it really. Writing is, you know, writing is a part of. You can't have a video game without a story of some
True,
description.
true,
So,
true,
so
true,
writing's a natural part of it.
true, true, true. Do you believe, by the way, that players who play games, they always like, or there are always like a small percentage of people who will totally resonate with the message of or the story parts of the game, the exact games? Like they
Yeah, I
will
think
understand 100% what the creator or the writer wanted to say.
I think so. I mean, that's the loveliest thing when people do
True.
really get it like that, and those are the things that really, really just make it all worthwhile. When you get a review on Steam or wherever, and somebody is obviously they just know exactly what you were going for, and it has worked on them in exactly the way you hoped it would work for. When you get reviews like that, it's just the nicest feeling. It's brilliant, and I think you have to remember you have to be a bit thick-skinned as a developer too, or any kind of artist really, and you need to, remember that you won't not everybody's going to like it.
True, true,
All you can do, I think, is you make the game that you want, that you enjoy, so you it has to, otherwise it's a cynical exercise in kind of second guessing market trends
true,
or whatever. If you're trying to make a game purely by thinking, will people buy, what are people
true,
going
true,
for at the
true,
moment, what are
true,
people
true.
going to buy?
You have to have a
um,
vision and stick to it.
yeah,
I
and I
believe.
think as indie developers especially, we have the luxury of being able to do that. We don't have a
To have
team
this
of
risk,
people.
right? Not to be
Yeah,
scared
let's
of taking risks. Yeah,
and there's not a team of people analyzing current trends and
true,
saying
true.
to us, right, we need to do this and this. So we can, just like with Cryptmaster, Paul and I we just made a game that we really liked, and at the end of it we can say very honestly, in our opinion, we made a good game because we,
True,
we
true.
enjoyed playing it, we enjoyed making it, we liked
It
the
was really a
experience of playing it.
fresh take on dungeon games and on
It's
story-oriented games. Yeah, especially
Thank you.
with the ability, to write words and get abilities. It was like, for me, it was like mind-blowing to see that. Like, it
Thank
was,
you, thank
yeah,
you.
it was
Yeah,
like, I don't know. I could say that I haven't seen other games this gameplay methods, to be honest.
no,
There
and
there is there is I I'm not sure if there is one that uses this gameplay method in other games.
we're not aware of it really. No,
Yeah,
we pinched from, obviously, or I said we were influenced by different things. So for the dungeon crawling aspect, obviously, there's like Legend of Grimrock and games that do that sort of thing. And there are games that have interesting like word mechanics. I was quite influenced a lot. It ended up being quite different, but I was influenced a lot to begin with by Scribblenauts. I've always really liked Scribblenauts, and just the potential and just that sort of wow moment of like, oh my goodness, I type in anything. I type in an angry sword, and there's a sword now that's clearly angry, and it just feels magical. And so we wanted, I think, to capture a little bit of that with Cryptmaster. We ended up doing it in a very different way. Um, but yeah, although there were lots of different games that were influences on Cryptmaster. I can't think of anything that does quite the same thing. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know, but it
I
seems
think
to be
it's
doing
good
its
because
own thing.
it's a fresh and unique take on a video game, so that's a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Were there times, by the way, when you were like questioning the stories that you have wrote, and you wasn't sure that it's good enough or not?
Oh yeah, very very much. Yeah, I think especially Cryptmaster. Just before Cryptmaster launched, I remember being um, just before sort of having a moment of doubt where I thought, I don't think I don't think this is going to work. I don't think people are going to like this. I don't think people are going to like. I was particularly worried about the character of the Cryptmaster, because he's quite obviously he's quite um, antagonistic. Sometimes he'll tell the player off, and he'll make fun of the player and that sort of thing. And I remember just before thinking, oh, people are going to hate it. They're just going to think, why am I playing a game just for somebody to like have a go at me? But thankfully, no. Then when it launched, people took it in the spirit it was intended in. Which was in a spirit of fun. So I needn't have worried about that particular point. But I always doubt. I think that's natural. That's
And
a natural.
what helped you being motivated not to rewrite your stories when you had this moments of doubt yourself or doubting yourself
Um,
or questioning yourself?
I don't know. I think probably because they are only moments of doubt. Generally speaking, I think other thing you need in any kind of creative endeavor, you also need, although you will have doubt, you also need to be probably a little bit arrogant. I guess
True.
you need to have a bit of faith in yourself. That you might have those moments of doubt, but afterwards you
What
can
other
sort of
people call ego, we call it like faith, right?
yeah. I was trying to avoid saying
No,
ego,
it's true.
but
It's true. It's true. I
it is,
always
isn't
say
it? Yeah,
this at my shows
yeah.
and at my other streams as well. That I had this session with my voice actor teacher because I was attending to voice acting schools before COVID, and he told me, my mentor told me that it's always better to have bigger ego because you always being able to, you will be able to punch it down, but if you have zero ego, it will be very hard to punch it up. So it's true. It's true.
Absolutely.
And you
Yeah, I
have to
think
be
that's
sometimes very crazy
very
in
good
order
point.
to extract your vision to something that it's called craft, your own craft, or your
Yeah, I think
own child.
yeah. I think you're really what you're doing. I mean, like when we were making Cryptmaster, it was like Paul and I sat in our rooms on opposite sides of the world, and you mentioned having faith. I think you said a moment ago, and it is just that you've got to have you're working for a year, 3 years in total on Cryptmaster on something very few other people have seen it. You don't really know if it's good or bad or not, so you've got to have that personal like faith in yourself. Yeah, this is something good that I'm making. This is something worthwhile that I'm making. I'm not just sat in a room
True,
messing around with
true,
something
true,
that's
true, true,
not going to make any money and not going to do anything for me at all. So you've got to have a bit of faith in yourself there, I think. Yeah.
true, 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 true. So when designing this story, what was the first step when you wrote the story of Quickmaster,
Um,
or how it went for you, or from what stories or memories of your life that influenced the very
oh,
first steps of making and writing the story.
from my life, I think um, Cryptmaster. I think the basic story came about almost accidentally. I suppose we were making something very different to begin with. We were making a game about pirates right at the start. I remember, and then it ended up having a word mechanic, and that word mechanic gradually changed into what we have now in Cryptmaster. And in the process, the setting changed as well.
I
It
see.
became more natural. We wanted it to be a dungeon crawler, and you were picking letters from things. So it changed to a setting of a dungeon crawler. Then we essentially we realised we needed the Cryptmaster originally was really just a sort of tutorial device, the character of the Cryptmaster. We liked the idea that you would have some figure in the game that was guiding you what to do, because it's a new idea, as you said, and quite a complex one in some ways to explain to players. This is what you can do with letters and so on. So we realized we needed quite a robust sort of tutorial, and we had the idea that if it was set in this dungeon, you could have a character that would just pop up like in a clap of thunder. And we were influenced by, there was an old VHS board game called Atmosphere. I don't know if you're aware of that. It was
I haven't heard about it. No, no.
oh, it was fun. This is again, it's going back a few years. In the 90s, I think it would have been, and it was you played it as a board game, but you had the VHS cassette running on
Okay.
the TV in the background, and every now and then it would just
Okay.
this spooky narrator would appear on the TV and say stop. And tell you what you had to do next in the board game, or a
Nice,
change
nice,
of
nice, nice.
rules or something. So we were already in the process. We were drawing on a lot of our sort of formative influences when we were making Cryptmaster already, because we were thinking of old school dungeon crawlers, D&D and tabletop games, old fighting fantasy books for the art style, and so that seemed to fit. That kind of very hammy sort of narrator character seemed to fit. And then once we put him into it, it changed then what the story of the game. Then it became a game about he's resurrected you. Again, that fit that was also came about because it sat nicely with the mechanics, because the idea is that you're having to remember all your skills by guessing the words, so it sort of makes sense. Okay, you're zombies, you don't remember anything, and it also justifies why you can only type in one word at a time, because you're monosyllabic, you're zombies, you don't really know what you're doing. So that excused a lot of things mechanically that we wanted, and once we had that in place, then the story just sort of grew from there. The story became the story of this necromancer who was going to lead you up to the surface. And it's very hard for me to say sometimes where stories come from. I think most of the things, I don't know that I've ever written anything for which I've had like one very obvious inspiration.
I see. So it's like more of a mix of everything.
Yeah, and it tends to grow quite organically. I often don't really know what I'm doing until I'm about halfway through, and then the ending and things will click into place, and then I can get the whole thing filled in.
By the way, do you see yourself as the commentator in the game? Like, could you resonate with that character? Like, you would be him?
I sort of, well, I mean, I did the voice for the for the Cryptmaster. So I think I did. It was during the lockdowns of COVID, so I was sort of stuck here for a lot of it. And there's a lot of lines. There's like 4,000 lines or something, and I had to re-record a lot of them. So I spent an awful lot of time with the Cryptmaster, just stuck in this room with the microphone, reading a dictionary at one point in his voice, because we have, because he responds to a lot of individual words, and it's a trick really, but he makes you think that he knows the word you've said. So that required me to go through more or less a whole dictionary of words, just reading them out in his voice. So yeah, there is definitely a bit of me in him, I think. But I think the nice thing, why he worked as a character, I mentioned earlier that I was a bit worried if people would find him too aggressive. You don't, especially, you're trying to guess words and things, and he's telling you you're stupid, and he's telling you you've got things wrong, which he does do in the game. And I thought that could seem a bit, that's probably might not be a nice experience. But I think what excuses it is the fact that the Cryptmaster himself also doesn't know anything, and he's really dumb too, and he gets things wrong, and he keeps trying to guess at things and failing, and so he's just a big doofus himself really. He doesn't know what's going on, so you can laugh at the Cryptmaster as much as anything else, and I think that excused the other side of it.
Okay, I see. Do you think, by the way, that making fun of the players is like, in a comedian way, was like something that you could not do in real life? That's why you put this opportunity to the game.
Definitely,
in a good way, of course, like not judging you, but in a good way.
Yeah, I enjoyed that side of it, certainly. I did. Yeah, and I think and players, as I say, it's been really nice. Players took it in the spirit it was intended, and if anything, I've now realised I should have been ruder. I think people would have liked it if I'd have been even ruder as the Cryptmaster. I don't think I was rude enough.
You were more polite then. Okay.
Yeah, I think I could have got away with a lot more actually, because it's a really nice thing to watch people streaming, and when the Cryptmaster makes his little comments and tells them to stop lurking and things like that, and they just answer him, they just, oh, shut up, and they develop like a little rapport with him, almost, which is really, really satisfying to see that. That's something I'd hoped for, but I didn't know if it would work that way. But it's it's really fun to see players kind of just developing a little relationship with him almost.
I see. Okay. By the way, are you planning, or are you working on some new stories for games, or is it like a spoiler time if we would talking about that?
No, I can say we're working. We're going to do an update for Cryptmaster is the next big thing. So we'll have an update for Cryptmaster. That will be. It's probably going to be late. Will be later in the year. What we want to do is expand. We're going to expand the card game a bit, because a lot of players seem to have really, it's surprised us. We put the card game in as a way to include some kind of additional rewards in the game to just fill out the areas a bit more. And it worked out really nicely, so it's been quite successful. So we're going to expand the card game, have like an area, a tavern, where you can have more card tournaments, and flesh out the last 2 areas of the game, which we didn't, we're pleased with them, but we didn't have as much time to put into them as we did the early parts of the game, perhaps. So we're going to flesh that out a little bit more. And it's quite exciting. I think really once this update is out, it feels like that will be that's the last thing we need to do to have it, to make it the game we really, really, really wanted to make.
I see. Okay. By the way, no, go for that. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, and as for the future after that, we don't know is the answer, I guess. Paul and I are definitely going to make something. We're starting now on making the next thing, but we don't know. We're in such early stages that we don't really know what it's going to be. So anything I said now would probably change in a week.
I see. Okay. You were talking about, by the way, that there were some parts of some stories that you have written that might change over time. So, and because of Paul's decision, sometimes you had to cut off some story parts. What was the hardest part, to cut off from your stories?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I'm probably, especially working in video games, I'm quite good now I'm quite brutal at just being able to cut my own work, ditch things that I thought were great.
Them like forever, or sometimes you go back to them and reuse them?
What I do is I keep them in a big folder.
Okay.
Like on Google Drive.
Okay.
And they sit there and grow and grow, and I must have hundreds of abandoned projects and like outlines for stories and things that never got used, and I would put them there, and I mean to go back to them always, and I don't generally go back to them, but what does happen very often is that little pieces of them find their way into new things that I make. So for example, when we did Cryptmaster, there are a couple of characters in there who snuck their way into that game from abandoned games from long ago. So things do have a way of, I think most writers do that. I hope they do. I hope it's not just me. They reuse things from the past. They store all their old ideas and then repurpose them when they need to. So yeah, I think I do that quite a lot. But also, as I say, I'm quite good now, and I think you need to be in games. And Paul's very good at this as well. I think we're both very good at being able to just sometimes just say no, it's not working. Don't. And it's easy. Again, it's another thing that's easy to do as an indie team, especially where it's just the 2 of us. And this is also, I think, why we don't like to bring other people in until much later in development, when we know because you get to a certain point and there's just the momentum. Well, we're definitely making this thing now because it's almost all in place. True. But in the early times, Paul and I quite often will make prototypes that are all pretty much are already like a game in itself. Most things are working, but then we just scrap them because we'll just think there'll be some things we can't figure out how to do. And sometimes, you just have to make the call. No, this is not working. We're going to flip direction. And I think we do that a lot in the early days of making something. Certainly, we've been doing that recently with 3 or 4 things. And then when that happens, Paul chucks out a load of code, chucks out a load of art. I chuck out a load of writing. Sometimes it can feel nice, though. Sometimes it could be quite freeing when you do that, because there's a part of you that, however much you might have loved certain things you've written or drawn or designed, there's a part of you that knows it's not working, and when you get rid of it and you've got a clean slate again, that can be really refreshing. So yeah, I can't remember what the original question was now. I'm sorry, I've just waffled completely off track somehow, haven't I? But yeah, I think I'm quite good at getting rid of things, and it can be painful. I think that was your question. Is it difficult?
Yeah,
it's difficult.
Hard and on emotional level.
Yeah, it is difficult to, and sometimes, and I mean, I think it's a common experience in games as well. Is I know most people probably who've worked in any role in the game industry will have been a part of projects that then later got shelved, didn't make it to release for one reason or another, and that can be quite painful sometimes, especially if you've put a lot. In any creative
True,
industry,
true,
you're going
true,
to put a lot of yourself into what you're making, and then it gets scrapped, and that can be, it can be quite soul destroying
true,
in the moment.
exactly. But yeah, at the end of the day, like you were talking about it, it's like a puzzle. Sometimes the puzzle place will fit in the future at the right place. So
Yeah, exactly.
you don't
Yeah,
have to
that's
give
right.
it up with that part of your project or something like that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's it.
By the way, are you guys planning to like release the game for other platforms as well, like consoles or?
Yes, the consoles later in the year,
Okay,
hopefully. So it should be this
okay,
year.
okay.
Um,
The
so I don't know
also
how much I'm
physical
supposed to
editions, by the
say.
way. Sorry for interrupting you.
Sorry, that's all right.
Yeah, so also physical editions because I love my physical edition copies,
I
of
hope
games.
so. I
Okay.
really hope so, because me too. Yeah, I would
I saw
love.
your
I would.
question on Twitter whether what kind of merchandise
Ah,
should be there out. Yeah, I also like
yes.
answered that question.
Yeah. There. I mean, that's something I would love. I
Yeah,
would love to have a physical, just to be able to,
true, true,
just to be able to hold it,
true,
put it
true,
next to my bed.
true.
I would love to have a physical edition. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So next question will be more personal, and I hope that you won't mind it. So, how do you feel about what's the perfect balance in your life that happens or not happening? Uh, Around like how can you make the perfect balance between your family and also your work, since you work from home, and I think
Yeah.
that it can be very hard, to let
It
them
can
know
be
that
hard.
now you are working, I guess.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've got, my two boys are 8 and 11, um, and I mean, for me, it can be hard. But for me, I guess it's been when I was teaching, I wouldn't see as much of the family. Teaching nowadays is a job; it's long hours. I would be gone in the morning. I wouldn't be back very often until late in the evening.
I see.
You still have work to do at work, weekends, planning, marking, things like that. So I had less time to spend with the family then. So for me, I feel fortunate that the work I do now is not. It doesn't take me away from the family as often as my other jobs did.
I see.
And it's been lovely at this point in the boys' lives, especially, to be working from home. Um, so I can manage my own hours. I can be a bit flexible. It is always it's a juggling act, though. It is, and it's hard. I must say, I'm finding it very hard now they're home for the summer holidays, because when I do work, I do need to get into quite a focused sort of moment. I can't work very easily in bits and pieces between other things.
I see.
It's like, if there's 20 minutes, if I've got a 20-minute window to do something, there's no point because the
True.
time I've sat down and I've got myself ready and I've thought about what I'm doing, that's 20 minutes already. So I don't get much work done while the family are in the house. So when they're at
Most of
school,
us men are like that, right?
yeah, I think that's very common. So when they're at school and my wife's working as well, and I've got the house to myself, that's when I really get to focus. But I do try. I've made myself a lot more routines recently, because it was odd for me to begin with, as I said, because I've done lots of jobs before, and where I would be out at work all day. So it was weird for me to start with, just to be. It feels like I'm not working at all to work from home to start with. So I've had to make myself routines. So I get up in the morning, I go for a long walk around near here. Um, I come back, I work certain hours in the morning. I'm much more orderly sort of person nowadays, I think, than I used to be. But I've had to do that, sort of, for my own, um, just my own ability to both work and spend quality time with the family. So I tend to try and stop work about 5 o'clock, and then don't even check any devices, and just have the evenings with the family, which generally seems to work. Although sometimes it's hard, um, and it's tough as well. Where I work with Paul. Paul's in New Zealand, so we're on opposite. If it's 8 o'clock in the evening here, it's 8 o'clock in the morning for him. So we have to sort of communicate at odd times sometimes.
I see. I see. By the way, do you play the guitar?
Very badly, very
Okay.
badly. Yeah, I don't. It's not there. on show. I promise it's there. There's nowhere else to put it. I
Okay.
sometimes feel embarrassed that it's in the background there because I
No,
can't.
it's okay. It's okay. I was
Yeah,
asking. I wanted
yeah,
to
no, no,
ask you
no.
what other hobbies do you have, and that's why I asked
It's
you
a
that.
fair question. Yeah, it's a fair question. But yeah, no, I don't. I strum a few chords. I'm not very good. But other hobbies, I mean, I walk a lot, and that for my job as well as a writer. I don't know if I would ever get anything written if I didn't get to go and walk
Were
around.
there times, by the way, when you were walking and you didn't have your phone near you, or notes that you can, scrap down your thoughts to?
Yeah, I do. What I'll do, I go walking, and I'm lucky. I live on the Isle of Wight. One nice thing about living here is it's beautiful for walking. We live out. We're on the edge of the countryside here. We've got beaches nearby and things. So I walk out around the coast, and I would just take I take my little satchel with
Oh,
me,
okay.
and
Okay, you're
I've got my
always
note.
prepared for that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm always prepared, so I take that with me,
Okay.
and that's quite handy. And then just when I need to, I just sit down and write something up. But yeah, I'm sure it's not the same for everybody, but for me, the thing that gets my mind going the most is walking. I have like most of my ideas walking, and then I'll come back, and then the tough part is now having to force myself to type it all up, all the
I
things
see.
I've been thinking
I
about.
see. Were there times, by the way, when some ideas came to your mind, but you couldn't recall those ideas because something more important happened during that time of your life?
I think lots. Yeah, and I'm quite absent-minded anyway. And I'm often that's why I do try. I try and always have a notebook with me now because otherwise I know, you know, the number of times that I've had an idea that this is amazing, and then it's gone. Mind you, but it can't have been that amazing, I guess, if I've forgotten it an hour later. But yeah, but I do that a lot.
I see. I see. Do you feel like I think that I asked this, but I'm asking it again since I will have another question from going this question. Do you feel like you find your inner child in you due to the fact that you started writing stories for video games?
Yeah, a bit. I think probably my inner child is never very far from the surface, in my own case. But I think, yeah, I mean, it is. I do. I have to sort of pinch myself sometimes because it's it's a lovely thing to do to be making video games,
Sure,
and
sure.
it's a very playful, lovely thing to do when you know. Um, as I mentioned earlier, it was something that when I was a kid, I would have thought this would be great. It'd be great. Just imagine if that was your job making video games, and now I'm doing it. And honestly, I feel really lucky. I do think it is great. It is great. I love doing it. Sometimes you can get bogged down in things, and sometimes you'll have a deadline and you're stressed and rushing to meet it. But generally speaking, it's and I guess I've had the advantage there, I suppose, of having had a lot of other careers, and I've had a lot of jobs in the past that were really hard work and were really stressful. And I mean, I know video games can be like that in certain roles and in certain companies and so on. But for me now, yeah, making video games is a joy. It's something every day. I'm happy to be doing it.
I see. By the way, I read a statement about like that writing, even if it's lyrics for songs, or it's a book or a novel, or writing stories for video games, uh, from a writer perspective. So this statement said that by the creator who said it is that like there is no thing that burning out from writing is just you don't write enough on a daily level or a daily base. Do you believe it's true? How do you feel about that in your
Right.
personal life? Do you believe in
Um,
like you can be burnt out by writing, or do you think like questioning yourself only comes because you weren't like writing every day? How do you feel about that?
um, that's a good question, and I don't really, um, I don't really have to force myself to write,
I see.
and I don't, and sometimes I won't feel like writing, and then I think, and
Is it easy for you to pick up writing if, for example, you haven't been writing like for a week?
Yes, for me it is. I think, yeah, it is, and I do know. I've spoken with other writers who probably have that, who do have more problems. I think with sort of burnout more. Some of it depends on the writing you're doing as well. I think I'm lucky that I don't often have tasks where I write to a deadline. So then I can imagine I would become a bit burned out and I would find it stressful because when I have had that sometimes, if it's not there, if the ideas for it aren't there and the thoughts for it aren't there and the deadline's approaching, that's when it you get blocked, you feel frustrated, you feel
True,
stressed.
true, true.
After you've done some writing like that, you can feel burned out. I guess I have had that on occasion, but I've been lucky that most of the writing I've done when I was writing for myself and I was writing stories and things for publication, well, I'm just doing that on my own time. If I don't feel like writing today, I just don't write. And I must say, most of the time now, I'm kind of like that as well. We have enough. We give ourselves enough leeway, especially as I say, in a small team. Paul and I are just kind of managing ourselves, really. So I sort of give myself permission not to do it if I'm not feeling, capable of doing it in that moment. Um, but I suppose I'm fortunate that I enjoy writing. It comes quite easily to me now. I don't know how it comes easily to me now. I hope that continues, because I know some writers can get burned out or
True, true.
blocked. I guess I'm just lucky that it hasn't happened to me to any great degree yet. So I'm sort of cautious. I don't want to jinx myself, but I think I'm lucky that it's not really been an issue for me. I just yeah
It's interesting because like when I was writing poems and books and small novels as well, like for myself, where I was working for companies for writing, video game reviews or news, I was always questioning myself when I was like, taking like 1 or 2 weeks off and wasn't, writing anything. And after this interview, after this interview with Lupe Fiasco, who is a rapper, and he was talking about like this topic and with his statement that he believes that there is not no such thing as burning out as a writer. My perspective shifted, and I started not to question myself, and I realized the more I write, the more confidence again I will gain. And
yeah
I always have these clicks, as a writer, which are so nice when you can be whenever and wherever, there are some clicks into your mind, and you start, typing down like a
yeah
robot, and people
yeah
around you like, what are you doing? And I'm just writing, leave me alone. So it's like
yeah.
such a
That,
cool feeling, and yeah,
I mean that's
yeah,
wonderful when you
I
get
can
that.
totally resonate with you on that. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that is, I mean, that's brilliant when you get that moment and you just
True,
click.
true, true, true,
That's
true,
one of the
true,
best things.
true, true.
I'm gonna close the window. That's my kids
No, it's okay.
outside.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Guys,
Don't you worry about that.
sorry. That's just to illustrate the point about
I will
about
have to
working
be
from home
influenced by
with
you
someone.
to always keep a notebook with me,
Yeah, I do. I mean,
because
that is
I
very
had a lot of ideas that I missed, just typing, because whenever I was on the road, I never had. I'm an old school person, so I don't really use phone. I don't really bring phone with myself, and I
I
always
don't.
forgot to bring notes. And it was such an annoying moment when some ideas came
Yeah,
into my
it is.
mind and I wanted to write it down, but nothing was there
Yeah,
to write it
definitely.
down to.
And
Yeah,
I find for me, I'm quite old school like that too. A notebook is the best thing for me. I
yeah.
mean, sometimes I look back at it at the end of the day and just think, "Oh, this is nonsense. What were you thinking?" But,
That's the
quite often,
questioning part,
often
right? That's
but,
a questioning
yeah,
yourself
yeah.
part.
But there's sometimes there's a little gem in amongst all the
Or you
muck
can
that
mix
you
it
can pick
up,
out.
all those
Yeah,
stories
that's it.
together, and it will be
Exactly. Yeah,
something as
yeah.
well. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the act of it, as you were saying earlier, one of the things is to just write.
True,
You just do it, and then it comes from there.
true.
You, I don't think anybody ever gets anywhere really by just sitting and like waiting for
True,
inspiration.
true, exactly,
Um,
exactly.
you
I
you've
don't
got you've
believe
got
in that, yeah, either. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I don't know.
It's
So
like a
it will,
click. It's always a click. Like, it's. I
yeah,
think
it
that
is.
our back of our mind is working like that. Like it's gathering so many informations, and if you are creative enough, and I feel like I feel like the power of most writers is that like because I was searching and analyzing a lot of writers and analyzing a lot of people around myself. I always do that. So I analyze myself as well. And I feel like appreciating very small moments in life and reacting to those small influences and moments is what makes somebody being able to write.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
are
I agree.
open-minded about everything, and they are, not boxing themselves into something that they are not. And it's true
Yeah.
for every creative person, not just for writers, but especially for writers. It's very true, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, I agree. I agree 100% with that. And I think you've got to be open
yeah,
to everything as an influence. Yeah.
yeah. Who was your favorite character, by the way, to write in throughout your life, even if it's not a video game character,
Uh,
and why?
um, the piece for choice of games that I mentioned earlier, Ironheart. There's a character in that called Tonzo, who is a sort of medieval fool, uh, and I enjoyed writing him a lot. I don't know that I know why I did. I think just because he was a very playful, very interesting character. I could do a lot of things with him that you couldn't, and he's probably sort of an exaggerated version of some bits of my own personality as well. I enjoyed writing him a lot. Um, I enjoyed writing the Cryptmaster, actually. In Cryptmaster, I think he was a lot of fun. You mentioned earlier that I was maybe getting out.
In a
It was maybe
positive way, of
a
course. In a
release for me,
positive way, yeah.
therapeutic. And I think it was actually, yeah, quite kind of a therapeutic thing to do. Um, those would be two of my favourites, I think, to write. Yeah.
I see. Okay. And so, what other characters would you like to write if you have notes for them? Like, you were thinking to write some characters or some stories that
Um,
you have
there's
might have
lots. I mean,
written.
as I say, I've got notebooks and folders on the desktop full of ideas and full of characters. Um, there are lots of characters I'd like to write. I would like to at some point. Um, I would like to do something. Most of what I've done for video games, particularly, probably everything I've done for video games has been either sort of fantasy or science fiction. Um, I would like to do something uh, with a real historic grounding. I would like to write some historical fiction
I see.
or a game, rather, but not kind of. I would like to write a character, I guess, who is a real historical figure. I would like to. I enjoy that kind of research sometimes, and that act of putting yourself or attempting to put yourself inside somebody else's point of view. Um, that's something I've not really done ever in any very close degree.
Time
Ironheart.
travel, see.
Sorry. So
Time travel, see. Time travel.
time travel was a good excuse for that, and there were some examples of that in Ironheart. There were some real historical characters in there, but I never really. I would love to. I would love to. Yeah, to do something where I could really attempt. I like research as well. I quite like that side of writing, researching things, especially if it's say historical fiction. So I would love to have a go at something like that at some point.
I see. Okay. Oh, have you been always this positive, by the way, and always like this funny about things? Because I love that. That's why I'm asking.
I
Or
did. I'm not sure if I am. That's a
you
very
are,
nice thing to
and I
say.
wanted
Yeah,
to
thank you.
realize
Yeah,
that is it something that you have developed throughout your experiences and life, or you were
I think
always like that?
I wasn't always like that. No, I think I am positive. I am I'm generally quite an optimistic person. I never used to be. I don't think when I was younger. I wasn't to the same extent.
Yeah, because it's
Um,
funny that if playing the Crypt Master, I realized that, or during my playtime with the Crypt Master, I realized that it's intentionally a dark toned game by its graphics and by its fighting against monsters, but it's still like, because of the narrator, it's such more a positive experience. Like, the light and dark is there, but not just on a graphical level, but on a storytelling level as well.
Oh, good, good. That's nice to hear. Yeah, but I think that was the intention in Cryptmaster a
Yeah,
lot as well. Even though and I think that's something that surprised a lot of players, that you can look at the graphics and think, oh, it's okay, it's going to be scary. It's
yeah.
going to be a scary game.
And
It's going
it's
to be quite
not like
grim.
it
Uh,
sometimes can be, but like it's not
yeah, it's
intentionally scary.
spooky.
Like
It's a little bit spooky in that
yeah,
kind of
exactly,
ooh,
exactly.
hammy sort of way, spooky way. And I think yeah, that's what we intended really. And I did want it to feel. Um, maybe, I mean, cozy's the wrong word probably, but almost like quite. I wanted it to feel that it was an experience like playing a game of D&D with friends or something like that. It was quite an intimate, quite a friendly sort of experience. Um, so I think, yeah, and I think in that way, it's certainly not it's not a cynical game or a very dark game. I think I like to think of it as being it's more playful than anything else. So I think it is quite a positive game in that regard. That it's yeah, it's what we mostly wanted players to feel while they were playing it was that they would feel entertained. They would feel it was fun. It was
True.
entertaining. Um, we wanted yeah to be a nice experience. We weren't intending. I didn't want to push any strong message, and equally I didn't want to you know I didn't want it to be a particularly dark game. So yeah.
I see. Okay. You mentioned earlier, by the way, that you developed thick skin before that you started, writing stories for video games. But were there times during your time when you were a game developer when you were very emotionally sad by some negative opinions?
Yeah, I think it's always yeah, I think people take it you're always going to take some of those things to heart.
True, true.
Um I
Like
mean
me
every
too.
you can't anything you make is not going to please everybody.
True, true.
Some people won't like it. Um and that's fine, but I think a lot of people don't realize. I think especially indie developers I think a lot of players don't realise. You know, we will read every review. We don't. they're not. They're not. They're not just writing them into the void. If you know, when you're working on a small game, you got. You know, you do read all the feedback. So yeah, sometimes it can be hurtful. I think which is just a natural response. But I am quite good now. I think I could be quite thick-skinned about it. As I said earlier, I know that you know sometimes people will write a review and you'll think, well, what you're doing is you're describing the game that you would have liked to play, but we didn't make that game. We made the game that we that we like to play, and then so you can just sort of brush it off when you've got that confidence in yourself. I
True.
think then you can think, well, that wasn't the game. I appreciate maybe you would have preferred that game
True,
that
true,
you're
true, true.
describing in your review, but that was not the game. That's just not the game that we were making. So then you can put it to one side. But I think you have to be prepared to take on board um, the views of players as well. Having said that, so it's not just a case of like, oh, if it's negative, ignore it. It's that's no use to us at all, because you do read it, and even in um, in any review is useful feedback. So whatever people are saying, sometimes you might read it and think, okay, well, I understand you didn't like that bit, but we couldn't do it because of this, that, or the other reason, or I just disagree with it. But you've got to consider it. You've got to. I think that's part of being thick-skinned as well. You don't let it get to you to the point where you can't think, actually, is that a good idea? Have they got a good point there? You've got to be able to take on board the feedback as well, while remembering, as I say, that you won't ever please anybody.
True,
You
true.
won't. You can please some. Sorry, you won't ever please everybody.
True, true. Yeah, because like we discussed it earlier with you and some other devs as well. If something is becoming mainstream, that the special feeling will fade away
Yeah, yeah,
most of the times. Of course, there are examples that for some games it's not true, but for most games and most entertainment media it's very true. And I feel like I'm always saying this at my shows, that episodes, that I feel like a lot of players now who became trend gamers since the gaming in general became mainstream, I feel like a lot of players are just people who are having these issues with their life and willing to put these problems into reviewing and making opinions about video games, which is very bad in my opinion. Like you said, they do not realize that a lot of developers, especially indie ones, are being able to handle these reviews, to read them, all the reviews, and they are not realizing it, that it can be very hurtful for them to read
Yeah,
it,
that's it. And I know I've spoken
especially
to
if
some.
they have hateful speech in it. So
Oh, that's
in my
yeah. I
opinion,
mean,
it's like people do not if they do not understand something, it's easier for them to judge in a very harsh way, and it's bad in my opinion. Like, I
yeah,
think that people should be able to develop their personality to a level when they are not harsh about their negative opinions. Or
yeah,
if they do,
absolutely.
they won't go into a very impolite way, than to hurt others, because it's like not even making any sense to hurt you or other developers, just to get something that might
No,
they do not might not even understand what they want. I always say this, that some of the players are not even understanding what they want. They just say that, okay, I want a good game. Okay, but what is a good game for you? Like, is it the
yeah,
story or the
that's it.
gameplay or the music or what? So,
Yeah,
and
and I
and
think they need to, you need to remember that obviously developers working on a game will have been, or 99% of the issues that players will raise have already been talked about,
true.
and they might not realize, but for one reason or
Because
another.
because they're lazy to scroll up and see if the first
Yeah,
comments
yeah,
and
uh,
reviews. Yeah,
and it will have been talked about during development. Discussed. Would it work better if this happened or not?
true,
And there
true.
will often have been some reason why it didn't. But I think, yeah, I think we sometimes say. I know Paul and I sometimes say about reviews, are they for some of the reviews, some of the negatives, you can sometimes say, well, that's what they think they want, but they actually don't want that. Sometimes people will say, oh, I would think it should work like this or this, whatever. And it's very easy to say that hypothetically,
True,
um,
true.
but very often, the developers will have actually probably tested that approach, and it didn't work for one reason or another.
And also that a lot of players do not understand these days that since the social media is so extensive and everyone can share their opinions, they do not understand that if developers would listen to every person, it wouldn't be like a magical game to enjoy. It wouldn't be a good game at all to
No,
enjoy,
that's it.
because you
You
would be,
couldn't.
making a game for everyone, and it's. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's impossible. I always bring up the example of Fortnite, which was hated by a lot of people, but it got to those people as well, and they started to love it. But Fortnite is a way different thing. Like, it's not even a game right now. It's entertainment media of all kinds of stuffs, like Lego racing games. It's everything in it. But
Yeah.
people have to realize that even if there is an example in the gaming industry which could make that happen, that it's for everyone, other games won't be able to compete with it, and they do not have to compete with it. That's the goal. That's the main thing,
No.
to realize that you do not have to compete with these big companies to be successful, and to realize that, okay, my game is also a good game. Like,
Yeah, that's it.
because
I think we just need to understand, as you said, you understand your target audience. Who are the
true,
people who are
true,
going to play
true,
this
true,
game and
true,
like it?
true,
Are we going to make this game for them? You won't.
true,
So
exactly,
you won't be able to please everybody.
true,
And even small things like, for Critmaster, say you'll read on the reviews, and you might have half of the people will be thinking the difficulty is too easy in this particular part. Half of the people will be thinking it's too hard in that particular part. So if you were to raise the difficulty every time somebody thought it was too easy, and lower it every time somebody thought it was too hard, you'd just be you'd never stop updating.
jumping up and
You
down,
just
yeah.
can't please everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you saying that, because, and interesting as well, because some big developers, AAA companies, do that, like Bungie with Destiny, or other, especially for multiplayer games. Some of the biggest
Oh, for a
developers in the
yeah,
gaming industry, they do that, and I'm always joking about it. They are now making it like a content level of updates, and not even just for updating for the people what they want, but it's also
yeah,
content, because like people have to adapt to new versions of the game.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
true. Like, it's
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
it's very
Things like,
it's the stupidity of like players, in my opinion. I know it's me saying very harsh things on players, but for me, I feel like I accept most of the decisions of developers, because I feel like if I would have the option to change, my option would not be the best for those games, because everyone can have good ideas, but come on, like it might not work out. Like you told us earlier that you might have tested all the ideas that they wanted to see, but it's not going to work out, and they have
Yeah.
to understand it. And you as a developer cannot like tell everybody what ideas you have tested out earlier throughout all those years that you have developed your game. So
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Is there any topic, by the way, that we haven't discussed and you would like to mention before we go into questions from my community and my stream?
No, I don't think so. It's been a really fascinating interview, actually. As I say, it's been really thought provoking. I've thought about some things that I thought I got a bit. I've been answering lots of the same sort of questions about Cryptmaster, so I think I've got into quite a little groove with that. But so this has been really fun.
Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you. Okay, let's switch from my questions to your questions, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know if there is any question. Hölgyek, urak, hogyha
I noticed somebody mentioned Remarkable. That's the tablet, isn't it? Which detects. That's like a handwriting tablet kind of
I
thing.
think it is.
I've been looking into that. I'd love to try that actually.
Okay, let us know. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. It's Mini is saying that the game is very scary. Yeah, but we talked about it, that it's not scary. It's not that scary. It's just, it might be the trailer which is scary, but
yeah, it's not. It's mildly spooky, I would say, but I don't think it. Yeah, we did talk a little bit at the beginning. We wondered about making it like a proper horror game or more scary, but to be honest, it just didn't. It wouldn't work with because the idea of like all the hangman letter guessing and getting letters and things, it's so goofy and kind of silly in a way. You can't really pair that with a very serious story.
True.
So we sort of realized, no, we're going to have to make this is going to have to be comedy really to fit with the mechanic.
True. Mini is asking, are you planning to make any cute game too?
Cute.
Because she were afraid a bit of the trailer.
Okay. Funny enough, yeah, we might well do. We're quite. Paul and I are both. We were going to make a game not so long ago, which was like one of the ideas that we've shelved for now was going to be like a kitchen based game. Balancing things on scales, and you'd have like little like fairy folk and things that would bring you things in from the front. That was going to be very cutesy and cozy. But unfortunately, we shelved that. The one we're making at the moment, though, might be like we're thinking of a thing which is kind of like a wizarding simulator. I don't know how to quite describe it. And it might change tomorrow anyway, so I won't say too much about it. But that would have elements of sort of coziness to it, I guess.
I see. Thank you, by the way, for exclusive informations. I guess it is. Thank you.
Yes, as I said, it might be though completely worthless information because tomorrow we might change.
Tomorrow we will have to make another interview just for that reason.
Yeah, we might need to update that several times probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Bármi más kérdés, hölgyek, urak? Let us know. Let us know. Szia, Graun, neked is. Ciao. Bármi más kérdés, hölgyek, urak? Any more questions? Is there any part of any of your game's story that you're not comfortable with and you would change, seeing or watching back your game now, or games that you have worked on?
I think every time I I look back on something after a little bit of time has elapsed, I'll always see some things that I'm not pleased with. I think I'm like that in general. I could keep editing forever. There comes a point I just have to tell myself, no, enough. That's finished. So there will always be small points that I would change. When I look back through Ironheart not so long ago, there are some things in the later chapters that I thought I would love to change the pacing there to expand certain bits. Cryptmaster, I don't know. I've not really. There are a couple that, as I said, it was the later areas. I really want to put more story into those. So I'm going to get to address that in the next update. I don't think I've never written anything though. I can honestly say I've never written anything that I've kind of been embarrassed or ashamed of
I see.
afterwards. There will always be bits and pieces that I think, oh, that's not very good. I don't like the way I phrased that.
It's like the
I would have
passion and the
had a bit
click, right? That we were talking
different.
about.
But yeah, but I've never. I can honestly say I've never written anything that I think, oh, I wish I could vanish that. You know, I'm embarrassed of it or I'm ashamed of it for whatever reason. No, there's plenty of time. I might still do that, but so far, thankfully, I haven't. No.
I see. Thank you, Lego. Thank you. Oh, grown tunes late, so I will link the game Steam page. Nézd csak, annak a
Oh, thank
játéknak.
you to the person who said it was a good interview to listen to. I'm never sure if I'm waffling too much. Sometimes
No.
I know
Do
go off on a
that.
tangent.
It's not waffling. I love that you're honest and you're open-minded to speak about everything. I'm always saying this, that I'm always, nervous a bit, even after, making so many episodes of my dev live show, that I can be very cocky about, and dickhead about being and asking, very personal questions. But I feel like I was trying to, make a fresh take on
I think it's
speaking
really
and
good.
talking to people, because I really would like to that it's not just me who sees behind the curtain of game development and see the actual human beings who are making games as creator of these.
I think it's great. As I said, I've not
Thank you.
I've not done an interview like this so far, talking about like like my creative process and what it's like to be a game developer and balance life and things. Those are great questions. I really enjoyed it. As I think I said to you before we started recording, when you're a game developer and very often you're working in this little bubble, I'm just sat in this room. I don't really see anybody else. I don't know if what I'm doing is good or not. I'm just
It
here
is. It
tapping
is. I'm
away.
telling you, it
Oh,
is. And it's
thank
like I
you.
said, it's a
Thank you.
fresh take. So I love the fact. And
Thank you.
like I said, I love the fact that indie developers are down to take the risk. I feel like in especially in the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era, and especially like till the mid PlayStation 3 era, because I was more into PlayStation games, but I played the Xbox ones as PC games as well. But I feel like those bigger companies were like being able to take those risks, take the first
Yeah.
step of
Yeah.
risking,
Oh,
talking with stories about every topic that's around us as humans. But now it's just we see that a lot of these AAA companies are scared, to
yeah.
they're I'm always joking about this, that they are making these safe plays, that they're scared to write these
They are. Yeah.
questioning and very interesting stories that would help question your surroundings or your life surroundings.
Yeah, that's right. They are. I think very risk averse nowadays, and I guess you have to be if you have a huge, when the size of the operation of some of the big AAA projects. If you've got a team of that size, you're gonna you can't take as many risks, I guess. But it is a shame. It is a shame.
True.
Because there's not, and there have been periods in the past, as you say, the early days of PlayStation, when there were a lot they weren't so risk averse. There were a lot more interesting ideas explored.
True.
But I think there are equally, indie games are just because it's, that what you can do now with a small team, and a lot of players are aware of that. I think aware that if they want to see the new and interesting things. It's not to say that big studio games aren't good. I play a lot
True.
of big
That's what I
studio
wanted
games
to say.
myself,
But don't get me wrong.
but
It's
if
not
you want
like
to see the really interesting
AAA
ideas,
studios are not making great games. It's just it feels like they are more into like the safe play, that they are not
yeah,
willing to take the risk, because whenever they
absolutely,
took the risk, a lot of players started to hate. And since we are living, like I said before, our interview to you, we were talking about that I mentioned that we are living in such a cancel culture era, but when everything is getting canceled by people, whether it's video games or movies or music or any form of entertainment media. And I feel like the best example was as for Last of Us Part 2. With that story, like it had been canceled by so many players and so many factors. Like, for example, for spoiler time, that the writer decided to kill Joel at the beginning, and everyone was like mad about it, like their favorite character has died, but they didn't realize that he had to die because of the story part, that the story progresses forward because of his death and his loss, that was experienced by Ellie. So
yeah,
it's crazy that people can so passionate about something that they will start to hate on it.
yeah, yeah. And
It's
there's a
like
lot.
it's like for me, it's like I don't know. I feel like during my life, I never was, or never ever during my life, if I think back, I happened to criticize any story that I consumed, either it was games or it were games or any other forms of media, movies for example, or books, because I felt like I'm always resonating somehow with the writer of that story. And I feel like the
Yeah,
problem is that people who might not have experienced, for example, death, or they have experienced it but they are running away from death. That could be the two cases when they could not accept something, or sorry, someone dying on the screen, as for example, for a video game. And that's I'm
yeah,
always saying it's rude for me to say, but that's the reason that people sometimes do not understand something and they criticize.
yeah. And I think, yeah, I think sometimes people's emotions, their emotional response to something, can take over to the
True,
extent that
true, true, true,
they forget to like look at it
true.
from all
Exactly.
sides and look at it objectively.
Exactly. And sometimes I feel like, not even sometimes, but mostly, it's not just understanding the message, but understanding the creator thoughts. Like I
Yes,
had
yeah,
I had this very interesting conversation with my grammar teacher back in school, that he was teaching us that we as students, and also like consumers of poems, we cannot understand the exact like message and the thoughts of a creator of those poems. And I was the only one at the class who was raising up his hand and saying, I'm not believing in this. I believe that I am being able to totally 100% understand what the creator wanted me to understand, and what he wanted me to see with his message, and what kind of thoughts he had. Because of course, if you read, like for example, a poem that is about love, or a book about love, every human being will understand by their own way. Somebody, for example, experience sad love, somebody is happy that they in the right spot with their loved one, but there will be some people who exactly will understand when and where it was created by the creator. And that's like the
right.
totally being able to resonate with that creator. And that's the beauty of it, that you if it would be something like you would fit in his shoes, like you would put up his shoes on yourself, and you would walk in those shoes, and realize what he lived through. And that's, I think, that's the most nice feeling in the world, in my opinion, or the nicest feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
So
no, I agree. I think whenever you sort of you feel you resonate with a piece of art like that, it's yeah.
true.
I think it is. I think, I mean, that's what it is. At its heart is a conversation between people, isn't it? Really, any piece of art.
True.
I I think.
True. Yeah. Okay. Okay, any more questions? Any more questions? Bármilyen más kérdés? Any more questions? Let us know. Let us know. Please let us know. By the way, would you regret if you have not uh, took the first step in order to write stories for video games? That's a question that I have not asked from you.
Yeah, I think I would regret. I think
Okay.
because, as I say, I'm very happy with what I do now.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess if I didn't, I might not know any better. I might not regret it for that reason. But yeah, I'm very glad I did, though. I'm very glad I did make that decision. As I say, when I stopped the teaching career to focus full time on video games, it was because I'd had just before then a few offers, and I thought, oh, I could financially do this full time. But then we had about a year. Then there was about a year after I took the plunge and thought, right, I have to basically, I have to free myself up to be able to take any of these offers. And then I had about a year when nothing happened. I didn't get any more offers, so we just like ticked down through all our savings. So there were points then when I was thinking, actually, I don't think this was a good idea. I'm going to have to go back to teaching. But then, thankfully, things just picked up all of a sudden. Just before the end of that year, I got some writing for Fall Guys. I wrote a bit of PC Building Simulator, Fall Guys. Then I started this project with Paul, and it all turned out okay. But yeah, there are a few moments when I was thinking, oh, was this the right decision?
I see. As a writer, by the way, do you believe in meant to be? That every aspect of our life is like a meant to be state.
Um,
And also like everything happens for a reason.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know that things could happen a different way. Put it that way. But as to whether it's for a reason or not, I don't know. That's my best answer to that, I think.
Yeah, because you earlier you were talking about that with all the experiences were the ones that led you to the
I
decision
think
to take the
yeah,
first step. So earlier
I
you
think
might not have been able to take the first step of write stories for
that's
video
true.
games.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think yeah, it's worked out. You can trace anything back to a series of kind of coincidences, can't
True,
you? You can
true,
look at the
true.
causality of more or less anything. I think the more experiences I have had in life, probably the less likely I am to have very firm opinions on anything. That's that's not always the way, but in my case, that's been the trend that uh, I've become less sure over time, or more open to other possibilities over time.
I see, I see,
I think.
I see. Okay. Have you, by the way, had a creep master in your life that were questioning your work? If it's not you,
Ah,
of course.
um, well, I think yeah, no, I haven't really,
Okay,
except for the actual Cryptmaster himself, who is like my internal voice. um, I haven't. No, no, not particularly.
I see.
Now, everybody I know has been very supportive. Like I say, my family were always very supportive about my
Do you think
writing.
it's important, by the way,
Um,
to have supportive like family members and friends that's
I think so.
got faith with you or in you?
Um, I think so. I mean, it's hard for me to say because I've not known otherwise. It certainly makes the process a lot easier. You know, being able to write or create if you've got a supportive environment.
I see. I see. And have you, by the way, have you been planning to like go back not just to write for video game stories, but to write books again and to release them, or even to
Uh,
release video game storybooks?
yeah, I'd like to. I like writing in general as a I've not written any short stories or non-interactive fiction, I guess, for quite a while now. So I do sometimes feel the urge to I sometimes feel I'd like to do that again. Probably just for myself, really, more than anything.
I see. Okay.
But then the game that we might be making next, I I'm particularly keen, as I say, if we do stick with this wizard angle, I would like to do a game where there can be a lot of a lot of text in the game. There's hardly any, even though Cryptmaster is a game about letters and words. There's hardly any text in the game. It's all done through the voice, through the dialogue and the mechanics. But I would like to do something where the lore's a little more in depth, with more writing actually in the game. So that will kind of satisfy the short story writer in me.
I see. By the way, what I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention when you mentioned these words that can be used in Cryptmaster is that there was a game called Near Replicant, if you are familiar with that game.
What's it called?
Near Replicants. It was a PlayStation 3
Oh yes,
game.
oh right, yes, I'm aware of that. Yeah, I do know that. Yeah,
and so
yeah.
the interesting part about that game is like you could find like these little books with words in it, and you could use them as abilities. And by the way, spoiler time with that game also, that if you would to like complete the game for 100%, there was like a very hidden message in it that the creator intended to have at the end of the game. So when the credits started to roll, there was like, the credits with words, and you had to choose whether to, sacrifice your save file in order
Right.
to
Oh,
help
okay.
or get help from other players. And it was like
Ah,
a small
I've
Space
heard about
Invaders game, and you could shoot the credits.
right.
So it
I
was
heard
very
about that.
interesting to see
Yeah,
that kind of thing with the small, using the words, creating, stories and leveling
yeah,
up those stories to the, main message of love brings people together. And it's very interesting that you guys also like had this, feeling of, creating
yeah.
words and creating words by words,
I,
let's say like that, like to have
I
a
must look
little
into that.
word
I will look
joke.
into that. Yeah, I hadn't realised that it did quite so much on the word angle. There, I must look into that.
Yeah.
I did read something about how it used the save. You could sacrifice the save file,
Yeah.
as you say. I'm sure I read about that, but I didn't realise they did quite such an interesting thing with words at the end. I
Yeah,
must look
and
for
it was
that.
very interesting to see that. And it was the back in the PlayStation 3 era, so they
Right. Yeah.
re-released it again on PlayStation 4. But yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Oké. Okay. Hölgyek, urak, bármi kérdés? Bármi kérdés? Ground, nagyon szépen köszönöm egyébként a subgiftet. Köszönöm szépen. Bármi más kérdés, hölgyek, urak? Any more questions? Any more questions? Just thought of a question for Lee. Do you leave Easter eggs in your stories? And if so, which one is your favorite one so far?
Oh, let me think. I do leave lots of Easter eggs in stories. I can't. Now I'm going to have to think of some examples. Now I've made that claim, I'm going to have to think of some examples. I do often. I like leaving these. What's in Cryptmaster? Let's see. In Cryptmaster, there's lots of references to different. There's references to Conan. There's references to. There's like one of the skills you can get for Sin is roll, and the descriptive text for that says that she trained with the Knights of Miyazaki, which is obviously meant to be Miyazaki, whose technique consisted of rolling around in plate armor or something like that. So there was like a little nod to to the Souls games. What other Easter eggs are in there? I mean, Cryptmaster is almost like a game of Easter eggs because there's loads of things you can type to the Cryptmaster that get a special response. I think I just had a lot of time on my hands, so he'll give you a response. If you type in ASMR, he'll give you a little ASMR reading. You could type in all sorts. If you type in rock, paper, or scissors, he will actually play rock, paper, scissors with you. That sort of thing. So yeah, it's almost like a game made out of Easter eggs in some ways, I guess. Cryptmaster. Yeah, I'm terrible for that. I do like to put little references and nods into things. Just even if very often if it's like authors who have, again, I can't think of a specific example now, but authors who might have inspired that story, I like to try and squeeze their name in some or a reference to something in one of their works. I'm a fan of Easter eggs.
that. Love that. Any more questions? Ladies and gentlemen, let us know, let us know. Bármilyen más kérdés? By the way, can you see yourself like writing forever? Or can you see yourself like stop
until I
writing
die.
and you know?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I enjoy it. As I say, I wrote for years, not professionally, just for my own. I didn't even used to show stories to people. The ones I wrote before I started sending things off to, even when I used to send off short stories to magazines, I wouldn't really show them to people I knew other than my
Are there,
wife.
by the way, any
Um,
stories that you have never showed to anyone?
Lots, loads.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've written lots. And I used to just write, as I say, before I started sending short stories off. I would still write, but I would just write just for my own pleasure. It's just something. It's an act. The act of writing is something that I enjoy. I'm lucky that I enjoy it anyway. Um, so I think yeah, I'll write as long as I possibly can before something happens to stop me from writing.
Okay. And what was the click, by the way, when you were kids that started this whole process that you started to love writing?
I think first of all, reading. I fell in love with reading
Okay.
first, and that was thanks to my mum, who used to, read with me all the time. And we had a lot of books in the house, and I had some very inspirational teachers when I was tiny at school as well, um, who just got me into reading, and I read avidly as a boy. I loved, but I still do read a lot. Um, so I think reading was the thing that got me into writing to start with, because then it's I guess it's always seemed like a natural progression. You love stories, try and write your own story. And again, I had teachers at school who were very very encouraging to me, and I was good at English um, all the way through school, and I enjoyed writing. And even as I say, even when I left school and I started work completely different in more physical jobs in labouring and things, I still had a love for books. I read all the time. I was a security guard for many years. Probably the main reason I did that for so long was that I just got to read books. I just got to sit in front of a bank of books all the time. So that was a lovely, yeah. And then into writing as well. When you read and you think about what you're reading, um, it just gives you the start of the process is almost just thinking, how would I have written that story? You'll come to a point in a story and you'll think, oh, I think I know what's going to happen next. I think it's this, and then it isn't that. It's something else entirely. But you've still got that in your head, and you'll be thinking, well, maybe I could. What if I wrote that story? I would have done it like this. And then even at a very simple level, when you're very young, you start writing your own stories.
True, true, true. By the way, quick question about endings of stories. Do you believe in that if there is an open ending to a story and there are like two ways that have been shown, for example, in a movie, for example, like in the ending of Batman trilogy, like do you believe that the creators and the writers of those stories are always intended to have the exact ending? It's just they are not willing to show it.
I don't know, but I can say for myself that's not been true for me. I'm
Okay.
quite a fan. I like an ambivalent ending, an ending where it could be one way or the other. And I've certainly written a number of things in the past
Okay.
where it's capable. The whole story might be capable of a couple of interpretations. Either it's
But you
partly
never
imagined.
felt like some of the endings are more close to you than the others.
Sometimes, but uh, other times I've had stories that I've written and I've ended them purposely with
Okay.
that sort of ambivalence, and I've not honestly known myself.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so I would say I can only speak for myself, but I would say from my own point of view, that's not always the case. I don't always have
Clear
a
vision.
definite canon ending, so to speak, in mind. No.
I see. I see. I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. By the way.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more questions? Any more questions? We actually discussed, by the way, a lot of topics. Any more questions that we have not discussed earlier? Bármilyen más kérdés, hölgyek, urak? Bármilyen más kérdés? Let us know, let us know. Let us know. By the way, if there is any topic that you would like to talk about and we haven't touched and haven't mentioned, feel free to do that. Because I think I asked a lot. I'm sure that if we will close down the stream and our interview, I will have like so many more questions that I wanted to ask, but it's just
That's always the way.
Exactly,
you think of things afterwards. I do that always. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's been a really fun interview. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate your honesty, by the way.
Unusual.
You were so
open-minded
about everything.
No, you're very welcome. No, it's been really interesting questions.
Thank you. Okay, if there is not any more questions, by the way, I appreciate the questions from the stream as well. Thank you for that, from everyone. Let's call it an end here, and yeah, let's. I will need some more minutes of you, but for those who are watching us live or will watch back the VOD or the edited version on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for your time, by the way, and I appreciate you joined us for today, and I hope that we will meet again either on this show or in private. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Anytime. I'll be very, very happy to. Yeah, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's, as I said earlier, it's lovely to get the chance to discuss these things. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks everyone who was watching us. Have a nice evening.